Hello, everyone. Jeff from the INTJ equation, and we are joined again once again by Rob, who was deemed the healthiest INTJ they've ever seen. Rob is now a CPT practitioner, cognitive personality theory, right?
Yep.
Yep. So, and his blog article, which we're kind of go over today, and kind of talking about how he had cohesiveness with all the types. You can definitely check it out at cognitivepersonality.com, where you can also find his blog. I'll link it down in the description below. All right, so it's probably been a little over a year since our last podcast. So you want to catch us up on where you've been?
No, just been chilling. So if anything, there was any kind of progress is CPT, so cognitive personality theory, and all of my blogs that used to be on Medium just had them onto cognitivepersonality.com. And just to give a little bit of a plug, CPT is a union-based framework that is uh, focused around personal growth and just something that Harry Morel created so we can use it in a more intuitive kind of way where you can kind of spot some of your differentiation and then try to work into individuation. So the only difference that we have, or the main difference from MBTI and CPT is MBTI was more based on putting people into boxes and try to figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are, and try to put them into what's the best career for you if you're this type or whatever, which is a little bit different from what Jung was trying to do. Jung was a psychiatrist, so he was looking at his observations from his patients, and a lot of what a psychiatrist does is try to have them overcome some of their mental blocks. So it's the kind of spirit that we're trying to put together. And yeah, go ahead and check it out. CPT, Cognitive Personality Theory. There's a YouTube channel. There's a website, cognitivepersonality.com, and he also has an ebook that you can find on Amazon.
Very cool. Voice just cracked. Very cool. So you're a practitioner there, right? So someone can be typed by you. Do you want to give the details on that?
Yeah, so we have tiers of typing. I think we have four of them. So the most basic one is email based, so you can just have Harry to go back and forth with you on emails. So there's some questions that you can fill up on a Word doc. There is the express one, which is the one I do. It's about an hour session that you do with me, and I'll ask some of the questions, and based on that data, I can give you your most likely and second likely type on the spot there using CPT frameworks. And then the last two, tier one and tier two, will be having a talk with Harry. So there's one tier one has one session, 1 hour session, and then tier two has a 2 hour 1 hour session. So he gives you a more thorough set of questions, and it gives you some other features that I can provide, since I'm the one that gives you your type right on the spot. Then he'll spend more time and probably give you like a week to think about what your type would be. So yeah, check it out. If you still want to try to figure out what your type is, you can talk to me or reach out to Harry.
Right. Very cool. I'm not too familiar with his system. I did watch one, or I watched several of his videos, but one thing that kind of made my eyebrows raise, I guess you should say, is he was kind of talking about, like, I guess his theory, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, was a little bit like OPS, where there's like jumpers and stuff like that. Maybe like different types use the different functions. He said that like an INTJ might use their TI, and I was kind of thinking, well, is that maybe like a shadow-based INTJ possibly, or is that maybe like a mistyped INTP? What is the theory behind that exactly?
It all comes from that we as humans use all the functions. Life is a whole brain activity, right? We don't just use whatever conscious functions that we have. Um, uh, his main addition that's different from everybody else is that we have the ability to use those shadow functions, right? So let's say we have TE as INTJs. We can dip, is what he would say. We can dip into TI from TE. And there's a little bit of a difference of like what is a TI for INTJs for compared to like a TI dominant like an INTP. Um, one is more natural, and the other one is a little bit more dip into as in your um, you using some effort to try to get into your TI.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. I did a podcast with Benjamin, and he does like an OPS. I'm not even sure if you're familiar with them, and he's starting up like this. Well, it's not him, but he's a part of it, a cognitive resolution, and they type me as an ESTP, oddly enough. So they
Mm.
kind of see me as a TI user, but I think I can see the faults of TE, and I try to use TI, just not to make a hasty judgment, to look at things a little bit deeper. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that we're trying to also, really emphasize is that CPT is, we like to have that looked or approach as in a complementary system, a system that anybody can plug in and use their own. That makes it work. We understand that TI and TE and all these functions have slight differentiations of their definitions. Like we try to make it so that there's some fluidity in our types, right? So like I can't always be an INTJ all the time, for example.
mhm.
There's some situations where like you talk to people, or maybe you come to a point where you're like, hey, I can't do this INTJ thing because that's actually being in the way of like what I want to try to do. I might have to turn into an ENFJ, for example, or ENTJ, just so I can like get off my couch and like do something, for example, right?
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that we just have to be pretty mindful of. And that really is based on because we have egos, not just INTJs, but everybody has an ego. Uh, and there is where like you can be within your ego, which is conscious, and anything that's outside of your ego is unconscious. And we're saying that we have the ability to try to quote unquote enlighten your unconscious parts, and one way to do that is to actually move your conscious area, your ego salience, into the unconscious. So you can start to see that if you try to get into TI, your TE does shut down, right? Like you don't look at facts as the way they are, but more like you go inward and try to have your own understanding of what something is logically. So it's hard to do both at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. And before we jump to the meat of it, this interview, I would like to remind you, if you like this content, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I did write a blog article again, the first one in over a year, so you can definitely check that out in the description below. And stay tuned. We will have questions for Rob and myself soon enough. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, several of my audience members said that you're the healthiest INTJ ever. And I know you talked about this on the first interview. I just re-listened to it the other night, and you did give some description. How did you kind of come about this? How did you, I guess, individuate and make yourself a little healthy?
Um, I understand the intention, and I will take the compliment. It's very flattering, but I do have to admit, saying to be thought of, I'm the healthiest INTJ is it's a little weird, dude. Like I'm just on my own personal journey, and I I'm just trying to be a better person than I was yesterday. Um, and everybody is on their own personal growth path, so it's hard for me to just be like I'm the healthiest or whatever. I feel like still have a lot of work to do, for example. And I don't think that's something that ever really stops. So and that does imply that for me, individuation is not a destination. It's a journey. To grow is to individuate, essentially. Um, it's a lot like Enneagram in a way, right? Like you can disintegrate or like integrate or something, and it's the same way that what Jung was trying to talk about. Like his whole point was to individuate, which is try to not to be a single type, or try not to have a single mental block of like how you think. There's many ways about how you can interpret a situation, right? Like all 16 type can look at the same thing, but they all have their own interpretation. So like which one of those types has the most truth, and you start to realize nobody really has a truth. They only have their own interpretation. So for me, I can only look at that and be like, if we can find a way to maybe find some commonalities of how people look at it, then we can try to put together what the real truth is. And that's what I've just been trying to do. Try to get healthier or something, right? Is try to identify like what mental blocks or what triggers I have. You can start to feel this raw sort of anger or triggers or things that just doesn't feel really good. And then as an INTJ, you can look inward and be like, what's going on inside me right now? Like, why do I feel a certain way? And I don't like that feeling, but you you accept it, you embrace it, and you try to figure out how to deal with it. Whether externally, like hey, I just don't like doing this, so I'm just gonna change my life a little bit around it, or you find a way to come into terms of things, and you start to see that a lot of the issues you probably have is probably like insecurities or trauma and things like that, right? So um, to start to acknowledge and embrace those things first is it's all I've been trying to do. I don't think it's a type thing. I think it's more like a personal thing beyond type.
Very cool. All right. Yeah, I kind of like I really reread Gets Differing. It's not my MBTI is not my favorite methodology by any means, but I am starting a book club, and the first meeting will be in August 4th at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. But rereading it, I can kind of see her mission compared to Jung's. Like you said, she just wanted to type people and kind of at a healthy perspective, and so we can get to know each other a little bit better and get to know ourselves. And Jung was really try to individuate unhealthy people, and I think that's kind of like I've been trying to spinning my wheels here. It seems like, and that's kind of the focus that I want to get back onto is really trauma and type and things like that. So that's kind of something I want to look a little deeper into. All right. And I remember in the first interview, and you kind of brushed on it at the beginning of this interview as well, you said that you think that we can access all 16 types. Have you fleshed that out anymore, or is that something you've been working on, or you just kind of want CPT, or is that what he kind of believes?
Yeah, yeah. Again, life is a whole brain activity. So there's always going to be a situation where to be a certain type is the best. And for me, I can only refer to to my own journey, and it's whatever I have fleshed out is just have a better understanding about what each types are, and how are these types within me, feels like how does it feel like to be an INTP from from where I am right now, right? Like as an INTJ, for example, I always have this need to try to know everything. For example, Enneagram 5 kind of probably has a tint to that. But it comes to because I could feel very insecure about not knowing anything, or
Mm-hmm.
to feel stupid. It really sucks, right? It's like I should know all of these facts. I should know that the sky is blue and why is it blue, and it's hard for me to get over this sort of imposter syndrome that I have, for example. Um, Now, when I try to understand what an INTP is, who are you just out of curiosity, like how try to figure out how the world works, gathering knowledge for the sake of gathering knowledge. Um, I can start to understand why they do that, and a lot of it is because they do feel that they could use their knowledge to help people rather than try to be a know-it-all, for example. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that kind of gives me peace that I don't have to be so serious about being smart, or I don't have to be so serious about like saying I don't know, right? Like it used to be really really hard for me to say that I don't know about something, because I felt like that reflected back to me that I was stupid, or that I just was not reliable or something, right? Like that's the idea I had, especially at work. At work you're hired because of your skills and knowledge, and maybe you're reliable or something. And for me to say I don't know, it felt like a failure. Um, but I started to realize that really held me back, or it brought down my confidence on like who I was actually contributing to, or why do people actually rely on me for. And you and an INTP, it's not because they know everything, right? It's because they're just very, very eager to help out. Is what I understood about them. And so for me, I came back with that that I am now more comfortable about saying that I don't know, but I'll find out because I should find joy about finding out things, or like I don't know, gathering knowledge for the sake of knowledge, just because this INTP inside me, likes that, and I want to bring that INTP more to light. And I do the same thing with all the types. So I have 8 blogs now, so I spend a lot of time on those. So I think we're just gonna go over those in this podcast. But the other 8, they're just gonna go through the whole same thing. So when I write about these blogs, there's like I base it on what I understand from the functions, from the people that I know, and also like how I could be potentially like what if what if Rob was an ISFJ, for example, like what kind of ISFJ would I be, and that's how I get to understand the types.
Yeah, very cool. So we'll go ahead and get into it, but I guess before we do that, I will answer Iceberry's question. As an INTJ, what is your role in contributing to the composite of humanity?
The composite of humanity, um, to figure out where our places like if I would just try to talk for myself, it's like to try to figure out my place, my place here, not just like in society and the whole world, but like what is existing here. um like I am definitely behind this face, behind my name, behind the personality type, some kind of conscious being that is experiencing, and I don't have to think too much about why this is reality is structured this way. But it's nice to just see that my whole purpose really to be alive is to experience, and we're all just trying to have a good experience while we're alive, kind of way. So what are we doing here? Really, it's just try to figure out like you know this reality that we've kind of came into. Um, it's just to try to relate to it, kind of apply it basically. Like if if this universe, this reality was created, it was created for us to apply it, to experience it, and to enjoy it. Really, just to see like what could happen, like what are all the possibilities that can happen under those maths and physics of this reality. And that's I believe that's what it's for. Um, and for me as an INTJ, that's kind of like my take on it.
Okay, very cool. We got one more. Guess we'll just take that real quick before I jump in. This is John, the idealist INTJ. What is so healthy about Rob? I definitely think the rest of the interview will answer that question, but if you want to chime in on that.
Oh, I don't know, to be honest. I don't know what is healthy about me. I can maybe give you more like what my perspective was. I can definitely say I'm healthier now than I used to be. I don't know if I can say I'm healthier than somebody else, right? Because everybody has their own path to me. And the only way I can explain that, why am I healthier than I used to be? I feel I'm more authentic now than I used to be. Authentic as in, I find my way to better express how I feel. One takes our own things. I just train myself better to be more in touch with who I am, and embrace what the truths are for for who I am. What are we doing here, and be better connected with the people, nature, and all that kind of stuff. That's it.
Very cool. I think humility is a great virtue there. And, you definitely admit when you're wrong and admit that, you're not always right. Then you have to impersonate other types is a key there, I think. But let's go ahead and get into it. We'll take a few more questions towards the end of this. So you do talk about like types and how you get along with them and their positives, and you kind of look past the stereotypes. INTJs are often seen as nihilistic and very cynical, and I think we are going to answer this question basically. So you kind of put that aside and you just humble yourself basically. Do you have any more elaboration on that? I can kind of hit that home.
Um,
Oh,
yeah, I'm just gonna try to talk into more into like cognitive functions for an INTJ. So, um, we can turn very cynical and nihilistic because of what we see, right? We look at the world and we have a certain interpretation of it, and the way we look at it compared to everybody else is through our functions of extroverted sensing, extroverted thinking. SCTE is a very cut and dry way of looking at the world. 2 plus 2 is 4. The sky is blue, and that's kind of really all there is to it, right? And you can extend that a little bit more, that the way you look at people too, right? This person is only there for a certain kind of transactional purpose, or we all look at people like minions or something. And when you look at things that are very cut and dry, it almost feels like there's no meaning to it. And you know what's hard is that we don't realize when we're young that the way we look at the world also affects us, right? It defines our outlook, and that could really turn nihilistic or cynical. Um, so it's really hard to try to get beyond that when you're young. But once you grow older, you'll start to see there's more meaning beyond the cut and dry way of looking at things, and that's what's gonna make you happy as an INTJ, because you are very influenced by how you look at things.
okay. So your first type that you talk about, or at least the first one I read, I just printed them all out and took them to work and read them. So you say that INFPs are their archetypal name is the dreamer, but you say they're the most realistic type. They kind of edge out the that our reality is actually just a bunch of constructs and just a way that we form society, and nothing is really real. And they're the most research type because they sit there and think about their deep values and kind of look past it. So what? So can you elaborate more on your theory there? I mean, I definitely agree because there's another question that we'll segue into later.
Yeah. I mean, the way you look at INFP, so instead of SCTE, they have NE instead of SC. So they're looking like a big wide view of what reality is. For us, we're more focused. We're more concrete about how we look at it, things like cut and dry and efficient, and just look at things with bullet points, right? When you have NE, you have a bigger brush of, or a bigger panoramic view of what reality is. So they can look at constructs um, like governments, like you know economical systems, religions, things like that, and then it can even look beyond of what our identities are. So like, what's the difference between an American and a Canadian, for example? Things like that are a bit more practical, and then they can go even more beyond with any to go a little bit more philosophical. Um, and what they're really interested in is what what's my place in all of this, right? What is my place in this matrix? Um, and this matrix that I'm in gives me all of these this feeling and experiences and emotions. What's in it for me? What is it that when I taste chocolate, it tastes like chocolate, like the way I'm looking at chocolate. But if you taste the chocolate, and say it's sweet and good and stuff, but I don't know if it's the same experience that I'm having, right? Like, for example, it's hot in Arizona, but to you it's probably like, I just live in Arizona. It's not hot to me, right?
Oh,
What
it's
does it
hot.
mean to, yeah? What does it mean to something is painful, or what's hot or whatever? Those are purely subjective stuff, and INFPs are just trying to figure that out. Like, why do we have experiences? Because pretty easily we know that we're just a whole bunch of cells, conscious meat bags basically. And if an INTP is looking about is looking into like what we are. An INFP looks at who we are. What's our identity? Why do we have this kind of subjectivity? What does it make sense? Why is this certain kind of music hit me in a certain way compared to somebody else? It could get pretty existential crisis, because it's like you can feel a little alone about all of these experiences. So you get into the quote unquote FISI loop, which is the feelings and then the internal experiences and everything that you got going on there. And um, for an NFP, it does feel like everything just kind of becomes like it's a construct that you're in. Um, and yeah, that could always be hard for them.
Yeah, I was going to say they're one of my favorite types, but I scare the shit out of them. What can an INTJ do to make them a little bit more comfortable? I know they get that FISI and they just want their comfort, their own personal comfort, and that's pretty much their life right there. If they're not too careful.
Hmm. Um. Yeah, I guess we have to get a little bit more in detail about how you scare them. um. I don't know. I think it's more that they look at their experience and their feelings really into detail. That anything that happens to them, so we talked about how reality affects them. Being around them, you are now part of their reality. Like, well, how is this guy affecting me, basically? So you could say whatever you want, and but they'll still pick up about how they were affected by it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it could be any kind of excitement. It doesn't have to be an offensive one. It could just be just anything. And they start to be sensing these feelings, and they can be like very analytical about it. So to them, that's how it is for them. That's just me. That's just my reality. So it does feel like they could be very sensitive to everything, because like anything that affects them, like this room right now is white, and then say all of a sudden, if I was an IFP and I woke up with this room being red, and I'm like, I have this shock, and what is it about red, that makes me feel a bit more pissed off than white, for example? And you can get, lost in that feeling, and that's why they usually are. Try to make sense of that experience.
Okay, I guess just elaborate my own personal situation real quick is I've talked about this a lot on my channel. I have avoidant personality disorder, so I guess when I do try to talk and initiate with them, because they rarely initiate with you, I can't always be consistent because my social battery is like a 10-year-old laptop that's been unplugged and you try to use. It has to stay pretty much plugged in. So I think, well, I look intimidating. We got the whole resting bitch face going on, and like you said, TESE is pretty straightforward. It's like a bullwhip, just cutting through things. So I think that's kind of why I scare them. Next, we're going to talk about ESFPs. Probably the most problematic, in my opinion, most problematic type for INTJs because of their duality in the socionics relationship. First half of my life, my parents they pretty much traumatized me, and now I think my ESFP ex, who definitely traumatized me to an extent, had an ESFP son. He's definitely looking like he's ESFP. He's going to be 6 soon, and now they're enlightening me and teaching me a lot of things. How do you look past the stereotypes that INTJs can be really annoyed by them because they're always just chasing the next shiny thing, not really thinking things through? And we can even be envious of them at times because, like it is, I believe in the duality, four sides of mind thing. Cringe with C.S. Joseph all you want. I mean, I think I resonate a lot with that, and we kind of inspire to be ESFPs, and we're kind of envious of that. How do you, as INTJs, look past the stereotype and just kind of accept them as who they are?
Yeah. First of all, I'm sorry for what you went through. I can understand. It could be really hard. From my point of view, my dad is likely an ESFP, and we have a good relationship. I'm very much like my dad in a lot of ways. So, if I claim myself as an INTJ, I'm a little bit of an ESFP in there too, right? So I've always looked up to him. So that's kind of like what my answer is gonna be looking like a little bit positive because I do look up to my dad. Um, and I think for me is because we do use the same functions, but we use them differently, right? If an INTJ, we use NI and FI, so we're always in our heads, and we just have this big wide view about where what our identity is, right? We look at things on the outside and just be like, I'm in this place in this universe, and what the hell does it mean to me? Or like if I were in other places, how would I be, right? Because we can see that we're very much local here, and we can try like sort of transport our identity somewhere else. If we were to like research, if I were to research like at some place in Australia or something, going on quickly in my mind would be like, what if I was in Australia? Like, well, how different would I be, right? There's like this sheer curiosity of who I could be as a human being if I was in a different place, born in a different time, things like that, right? A lot of that it helps when we try to mastermind, quote unquote, and strategize things because we can come up with hypothetical situations and put ourselves in it so we can figure out like how it feels to be in it, right? An ESFP uses instead of NI and FI, they tend to use SC and TE. So a lot of their world is more attached to reality. And that could cause a problem with INTJs because for us as introverts, we like to look at our world a little bit more standoffish, right? Because this world is how it's going to determine my thoughts about it. But here you have an ESFP that just kind of comes by and just sort of destroys everything, right? Basically, they don't destroy everything, but they kind of do their own thing or whatever. And I think a lot of that comes with some negativity for us because it's sort of like, hey, I was just watching this world here, but you're just coming out to mess it around for me, right?
Yeah.
And it could be the other way too, where it's like, what are you doing in your head? You're just wasting so much time, right? So there's sort of this weird dichotomy thing, and you start to realize it's we're all just kind of projecting each other, really, because for us, we're always talking about what if I was in this world, what if I was in that world, and the ESFP comes by and says, no, I am in this world, I am the king of this world. I'm just gonna do whatever the fuck I want, right? And for us, that's that seems real careless, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, you always come back in your mind. You're like, well, every time I say what if, eventually it has to be what is, right? Because what's in it in my life if all I'm doing is just being stuck in my head. There's nothing real about that. It's just all ideas, and ideas are just they just kind of vanish if you don't do anything about them, and we can die and nothing happens, and that's to me that's what sucks. And something inside me then says, no, you gotta have to do something about this. You gotta have to change the world so it becomes like an extension of who you are here. And when I thought about that, I'm like, well, that is exactly what an ESFP does then. And ESFP says, I am who I am, and I'm going to change the world in a way I see fit. And that's where I started to see this connection. I was like, yeah, I think deep down inside, I am also an ESFP. And then, going back to, yeah, I do look up to my dad. And that just gave me more peace with dealing with them and even, look up to them. Like, hey, I don't know how you do it, but, I definitely want to have that confidence. And that's sort of quote unquote recklessness, but to them it's not reckless at all. It's just their way of being. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely had ESFPs that I'm close to. My cousin was born 6 days after I was, and he's an ESFP. It's kind of like weird because we're like two
yeah,
opposites, but we were close at times in our lives for sure. And the next type is a very similar type of them, of course, ESTPs. I definitely was raised a lot by SE DOMs, SE heroes, whatever you'd like to call them. And I never really found something that you wrote in your article about them true in my experience. You said that they can research deep, convoluted literature and analyze theories. Can you give us some examples of this?
The examples I would have are personal examples, so people that I got to know. A lot of my friends who are professionals like doctors, lawyers, engineers, um, finance managers. A lot of them are ESTPs, and you can look at ESTPs as in they're the type of social people that they just want to make a difference in the world or a difference with the people that they're interacting with. Um, the healthy ones, at least, they just want to help, right? And for them to help, they have a then that gives them like this huge responsibility that they need to know everything, just like me, right? And for them to know everything, then they go ahead and study a whole bunch of stuff, like a lot of the nuances of concepts. Like for example, being a doctor, that I would assume that it is deep convoluted literature to be a doctor, right? To do a lot of these studies that are very cut and dry too. But for me, it's like I'm just not a doctor. It doesn't resonate with me, so I don't really care. But for an ESTP, they look at well, a doctor helps people, and they can use their expertise and their knowledge to help people, and they like that. Um, Being a salesman is stereotypically an ESTP, but it's kind of the same way, right? It's like my knowledge in cars and my knowledge and stuff like that can help people. Like these people can be more awake or more informed if I were to give them that information. So they use that expertise and knowledge that they accrue to help people. So they're very much driven to try to research and learn and study.
Yeah, I personally don't know any ASTP doctors, but it definitely happens, especially surgeons. I was thinking back, and I had some carpal tunnel release here, and I
Oh
think
man.
he was an ESTP. I think that SE high SE is definitely a good skill to have with that scalpel. I definitely won't probably want not too many INTJs with their SE inferior cutting on me. All right. The next type is ENFJs, and you pretty much describe them as the way I see them. I guess is they're very cut and dry. What you see is what you get. I guess an ESFJ could be similar as well. Do you think this is a good thing for INTJs? Personally, they come off a little too strong for me, and the FE there. So how's your relationship with them, and what do you think we can really learn from them?
I'm actually rewriting that blog a little bit, because my blogs have sort of started to go into a different direction. So it will look a little different, but to answer your question, um, they do come off strong, and a lot of it is because they actually are very much principle driven, and the key word is principle here. Like if an ENTJ is moral or value driven, they do things based on what they believe in. That is their sort of moral code. ENFJs are principle driven, so that's more of a society code, like ethics and stuff like that. So um, they believe in things like love is the answer, or cheaters never win, these kind of things, and they kind of test you on those principles, see if you're a good person, right? And with FE being a dominant position and SC, they really are trying to basically dig into you, like, hey, what kind of person are you? Basically, that's just their thought. Like, hey, I want to apply this principle, and you can kind of look at principles as like the Ten Commandments, that everybody has to follow, kind of way. Um, and I just want to test you out, like, hey, what kind of person are you, Rob? Right? So they really are digging into those kind of things, and I could see how it feels a little intrusive at times, right? Because it's a when you're an FI user, you could be a little bit private. You could have some thoughts that are inside you that you just don't want to show, right? It's a little uncomfortable, but then you have somebody who is proactively try to open you up and see where you're at, or how do you fare against their Ten Commandments, right? Um, so it does feel a little intrusive, and I can understand that. My experience of ENFJ is actually maybe thankfully, um, I've always passed their test in a way. They've always came up to me. It's like, hey, Rob, you're a good guy, man. You're not like the others, kind of way. And I can't tell you what is it about me or whatever, but I've passed their test, and there's something about that they're just more willing to talk to me. Like they're just trying to figure out like what is it about me that that makes me who I am, and it gives me more confidence about who I am because there's a lot of times when I'm trying to explain things. Like you're asking these questions right now, like I haven't really thought too much about them, but somehow it comes out of my mouth. But it does reflect like my thoughts and everything deep inside, and I have to thank ENFJs for that. Like they gave me the opportunity to explain myself. They gave me the opportunity to open up, and it's always a rewarding experience. To do that, to open up, and they've always been supportive. So maybe through their own kind of positive reinforcements, I've learned to externalize how I'm feeling. So I really have to thank them for that kind of stuff. My blogs actually was motivated by an ENFJ that I was talking to. She was like, you can't, nobody will know about you if you don't open up, kind of way, right? Like your feelings don't market themselves. You have to do it yourself. Like I can only open you up so much, but at the end of the day, I'm actually just trying to guide you to try to be your real self, right? So the irony of Effie dominance is that they're fake, but they're actually asking everybody else around them to be real, and that's what I'm gonna do. So this is where I am.
So what if you are real with them? What if you are just in a bad mood? I mean, FE users say they seem probably the most sensitive types. You could argue INFP or ISFP, but in my opinions, FE they really need that validation from you. What if you're just this nihilistic, gloomy INTJ like myself, and you just tell them the truth, like you're having a bad day, or you don't smile, or you don't laugh at their joke, or whatever? How do they perceive you? You think? What's going through their head?
Um, they actually tend to like accept your moods, right? Like on a surface level, right? It's like oh, you're sad. Like, what is it about you that you're sad, or you're kind of like a grunchy mood right now. Like, what's going on, right? And so you can see how they always follow with some kind of question. So their TI is sort of flaring up, like, why are you sad? You're not supposed to be sad right now, right? And sometimes you kind of don't have any other reasons besides the world's kind of fucked up right now. I'm just sad about that. That's all, right? Um, but for most of the time, that's okay. Especially if it's still falls within their own TI 10 Commandments principles. But if it goes against that, if one of the 10 Commandments was like, and I'm not saying every ENFJ is like that, but let's just take like a very very young one, and they're saying, I don't know, like a happy life uh, is when you put a smile, right? Or like smile to have a happy life. Obviously there's fake smiles out there, right? And I'm definitely not happy, so that's false. But let's say they very very simplistically, like hypothetically, that's what they believe in, right? So I'm actually going against those principles now, right? So and that really triggers them, like that's not the truth here, like but I'm telling them, no, that's just how I feel. But it's like, no, that's not true, right? So there is a sort of weird imbalance of what they really think is the truth, and then there's me where like I'm whatever your truth is, I don't apply to it. You just kind of have to really really let me be on that one, but for them, the truth is supposed to be it's supposed to be applied to everybody. So there's something wrong with you, right? And I'm like, no, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just pissed off. That's all, right? But that's all there is to it. Um, what was the question, really?
I was saying how INTJs are usually, they're pissed off mood, or they are perceived. We're not always pissed off. We're just kind of neutral. A lot of times I'm just kind of flat, I guess. And they kind of, that FE has to pry and get a read on you. But, we're like a closed book, I guess, and we're hard to get a read on at times. And they're just trying to pry and pry and pry. And they might even assume you're mad. Then usually we get irritated when people try to pry and to our FI. That's our feelings and
Mm.
our emotions. That's our soft spot, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Like so, if TI, a very very simplistic TI says, if you're not smiling, then you're sad, right?
Yeah.
And if you're smiling, then you're happy, and they're just trying to, quote unquote, fix you up. They just want you to figure that out. Like, you're still not smiling. Like, you should be smiling, and it's just, yeah, that it's just not within your TI framework. That, it's possible that I can just not smile and be fine. Right? So they just have to learn that. Thankfully, a lot of them have. At our age, we're late 30s now, and they know. Once they awaken their own FI self, that we don't always have to follow certain rules and things like that. Like, we can be our own person and just be happy with just our even keeled resting bitch face. That's totally fine.
Okay, and to the audience out there who's watching live, I appreciate you, of course. And if you do have any more questions, we're going to hit this thing home in about 10, 15 minutes. So if you want any questions answered, go ahead and write them in the chat and I'll get to them eventually. I just want to give a little, they're probably the ENFJs before we go on to the next type. They're probably the type I have the least experience with them out in the wild for some reason. I know they're pretty rare themselves, but usually they make their presence known. I worked with one ENFJ, and she's like the one type that didn't really give up on me, or at least person, I should say, individual. ESFJs, they kind of give up on me when I'm kind of shut down and they can't get their FE read on me. But we worked together, and she just kept prying and prying and prying, and she got a little bit out of me here and there. But when I shut down, I shut down, and I'm a very unhealthy INTJ. Or at least I'm on my own path to individuation and everything like that. Just a comment there. Next is probably, well, you said it in your blog, one of your favorite types, and definitely one of my favorite types, INTP. And you said that they definitely, with that TI hero, seek the truth, and it's very important to them, and they admit that they're wrong, willing to admit that they're wrong. And INTJs are very stereotypically not very willing to admit they're wrong, or they're not. Dang, I just worked a 12 and a half hour shift. I'm sorry. We don't like to admit we're wrong, and they don't mind admitting that they're wrong. But I kind of found this the opposite. I had an INTP friend growing up, and he's probably pretty unhealthy because he had a borderline mother too. He would not admit to being wrong for the sake of it. And actually, the guy who got me in judo was an INTP, and he would not admit. I mean, he's very TISI. So, what is your experience with INTPs and admitting that they're wrong? And how do you convince them that they're wrong when you're actually right?
Yeah, with TI side, they have this logical precision, right? And the thing with TI users is that they put a lot of their sort of emotional stake into their logical frameworks. Like they want to be right, right? Because that feels good, to have your logical thoughts validated or accepted is sort of like what they do. It gives them this existential sort of reward. INTJs is the other way with our FI. Where we're good people, and people come to us because of our thoughts about how the world is, and what our experiences are. So INTPs is the other way around when it comes with the logical stuff. So yeah, they do come up with, hey, I've deducted. And here's my understanding, and I'm gonna present it like I'm presenting it like it's right, like as far as I understand something, right? And to be able to convince them, it's almost like you try to convince somebody, hey, like I think your morals are a little off here, right? So there's sort of like, okay, you kind of have to you kind of have to convince me then, right? Because I definitely worked it out, especially with SI. SI gives you this precision of like, everything has lined up for me here. This logic came from, one place to another kind of thing. So where in this logic am I wrong is basically what they're trying to say. And you really have to give them that precision. Like, here's exactly where you're wrong kind of way, right? And we're actually pretty good with that. SETE, we can like nitpick stuff, right? Like, little grammatical errors here or something. We'll find those things, right?
We're the grammar Nazis out there.
Yeah, There's like this weird OCD thing. SC does that for us, and we can try to do that with INTPs. Like INTPs, you can just ask them like what their train of thoughts are, and they'll give it to you like in detail and and sequential, right? And you can just go like, oh, here's where you kind of, you know, took a different way or whatever, because I'm seeing it in other ways, right? Um, you just have to realize that those are your own thoughts, and even though it's pretty tempting to look at, you know, TI as like the truth, because it's really just your truth though, right? Um, my truth really, I don't put too much stake about what my truths are. I just look at what is, right? Like the sky is blue. I'm not gonna, you know, put too much stake with that, right? But you know, if you say that the sky is actually not blue, I'm like, I don't really understand what you're talking about. Like you have to like lead me to, you know, where you are or something. So um, that's where a lot of the things are for me, because they could be right. And for me, it's always hard because I always have this sort of like, um, shit, maybe I'm wrong then, right? And and it's what did I say on my blog? It's like downing a glass of whiskey or something. It's like, you know, for an INTP, to me, I assume that they're more right than I am because I don't put too much thought about, you know, what the facts are. I just kind of intake them and study them, right? But I only study as much as I need to know about them, right? And I have to assume that they know more than me. So you know, if they push back onto me, then you know, now I'm put onto the spot. Now I'm like, okay, well, shit. Where did I miss out on, right? Like, so there is this little back and forth that we do, but we also totally understand that, you know, this is actually what we're trying to do is actually trying to meet intellectually, like, you know, this is how I understand it, and this is how you understand it, and with SI and SE, you can sort of nitpick about what our differences are, and see if we can try to find a way to connect. Like, okay, now I learned something from you, or maybe, you know, I've enlightened them in some way that they never thought about or something. So it's a good thing for us because we don't put too much of our emotions, you know, into that mix, right? And it's never really something that we get heated about. It's just like, for me, it's like, oh, it's just is, and you know, for them, it's like, oh, now I'm actually a better person, or because I am now more knowledgeable about it.
Yeah. I think the one reason I think we're really insecure about looking like perceiving that we're right all the time with our TI and the shadow. This is John Beebe's model that I prescribe with exactly, and with our TI cynics, TI critic, whatever you like to call it, we kind of we doubt ourselves. We doubt if we're smart enough. Like for years, I wanted to do something like a blog or a YouTube channel, and well, the avoidant personality disorder is definitely a barrier for me personally. But I think we can kind of think that we're stupid at times. I grew up thinking I was stupid, and I don't think I'm exactly stupid. And I don't think like INTJs are the smartest type, or even INTPs. I think it kind of varies, and there's many different types of intelligence. But yeah, you got to kind of get over that fear. And if you like, if this has kind of been a big basis of this interview. If you're wrong, just admit you're wrong. I mean, I think the truth can be a variable, like Rob says, and everybody has their own personal truth, but there's also agreed upon truths that we just kind of need to agree on just to make things flow. And the last type that you've written about, you said you've written about 8 types, and hope I didn't skip any. ENTJs, they're definitely kind of stereotyped as one of the most selfish narcissistic types, and they're very inferior with their FI, is what their fourth function is. But you say that they can be very unselfish. How so?
Um, yeah, the thing about FI, you know, if you don't have like an FE or a TI that's awakened, is, you know, you can't really see what's actually fair, right? FI dictates, you know, what you do, especially TI down. So ENTJs, ESTJs, they're basically driven with their thoughts, their morals, and if one of their morals was to, you know, was in the nature of being unselfish, like, being a good, like being unselfish is being a good person, then this is what they're gonna do. They're gonna do anything that is unselfish, and it's really easy for them to overreach that, like, you know, being taken advantage of. And you know, they can use their TE prowess to do everything, right? Like, you know, if you teach an ENTJ, hey, you know, if you want to be a good person, is to serve and to be unselfish and all that kind of stuff, they'll take that as their moral definition of what a good person is. Um, so that could be pretty dangerous. But yeah, I mean, you're right. There's definitely other INTJs that are more on the selfish side, and that usually comes from having their FI, quote unquote, unfed, right? So there's too much of TE going on, and TE, even though it's like a logical thing, there's actually a lot of value put into them because when you look at metrics, the metrics says pass, no pass, good or no good, or something like that. There's already a judging thing that you do, but for them, they look at it as being purely logical. But like what tells you, that something is good or bad, right? Like in this universe, it's whatever, right? But for them, there is this kind of dichotomy of pass and no pass, or good or no good, and that's really driven from their FI. So if they don't look too much into it, like why do I think this thing is good, or why do I think this thing is a pass or a no pass, um, it could bite them in the ass, because then all of a sudden, you know, the everything changes, or like a situation, everything changes where like what they thought was good or bad, changes on them, and now everything could look bad or something, and they all think that they're trying to save the world with that. They're like, no, everything is turning bad or something, but what's really happening is that it's really just their own judgment of it, and to have your own judgment that way, it does make you look very, very selfish.
Yeah, and I did quite a few videos with an ENTJ named Xeon. I don't know if you remember from the server or not. And he said one reason that ENTJs do this is because they're just so insecure about how they feel and coming off as a bad person that they just kind of try to control things. They're just like INTJs. We kind of control our own little inner world. They try to control the outer world.
Yep.
So that's kind of the reason for it. And I told this story before on my channel a few times. There was I kind of grew up with her. I didn't really know her that well. She did kind of flirt with me a little bit, but I had no clue with my FE trickster. But we did end up working together, and she was an ENTJ, a very toxic ENTJ, and her vices got the best of her. And she lost her life a few years ago, unfortunately. But she was always like very adamant about pursuing me as when we're working together. But I could just kind of see INTJs have the bad habit of not really giving people, putting them at face value, I guess, and we just kind of see their flaws, and we kind of use our NI or any inner shadow of my theory, I guess. Well, not my theory, but it's what I prescribe to. And we kind of see, where this relationship's going to go. We just kind of like, oh, no, not interested. But yeah, give ENTJs a chance. I think they're definitely another rare type. Even, I guess, some statistics, even I take them with about a 50-pound bag of salt because there's so much mistyping out there that they're actually the rarest type. But yeah, I believe it maybe. All right. What's that?
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really concentrate on that too much because there's just so much mistyping out there. All right, I think we're going to hit this home. And yes, Sarlinda, I do appreciate TI as well. And to answer I just saw your Discord message. I haven't got the poll up on Discord yet, so stay tuned for that. I'm planning the next book club for September. It's going to be on the 7th of September at 4 p.m. on a Sunday, Mountain Standard Time. I'm going to try to keep that time. 4 books that we are going to go over is Neuroscience of Personality by Dario Nardi, The Obstacles Away by Ryan Holiday, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, and The Body Keeps a Score by Bessel van der. Yeah, that guy. I forgot. I'm sorry. It's a very Dutch name, and I'm very tired. But anyways, vote for that. The voting ends on August 7th, so go ahead and get that in. You can check it out on Instagram as well. Like, share, subscribe if you like this content. Rob, check out cognitivepersonality.com. I have a direct link to his blog, and I'll also put the link to Harry's site as well. I think we're going to be on a clickbait. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks for having me.